Nguyelo numandenga, nguyelo numandenga, nguyelo umandenga, ngumutilo wesiswati.
Hello everyone and welcome to the African Energy Podcast, where we talk about sustainable energy and transport solutions for Africa. Today, my guest for the second time is William Batman. William, welcome to the African Energy Podcast once more.
Oh, thank you, Gerd, and to the listeners out there, it's great to be back. And well, we look forward to a fruitful discussion today.
Yeah. I hope so. So, William, let's start with 2020 in review. In one word, how would you describe 2020 with respect to sustainable solutions for Africa in a circular economy?
One word, let's say challenging.
Okay.
It was just, I think 2020 was just one challenge on another. First getting to terms to the new normal, trying to adjust while not losing focus of what needs to be done, and then getting things done in these challenging circumstances. So it was I would say a challenge for different levels. But yeah, let's see what 2022 brings. I think it's still going to be challenging, but I think we're getting used to this now. And with the vaccines coming, and I see the people's attitudes are also now picking up more positivity in the general public. So yeah, let's take it step by step with a positive mindset, but deeply entrenched in reality.
Can you break that down? I mean, obviously, I know COVID is in there and all that, but practically speaking, how do they impact the space?
Yeah, you just have to repeat that. You're breaking up.
Yeah, I would say that, like practically speaking, okay, in practical terms, how were you impacted? I mean, the sustainable energy sustainability space.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the inability to travel, the type of work we do is based on, meeting with people, but then also building things, manufacturing. There's a lot of interaction with your people, and then also in spaces where things are being built. So that's on the practical side, that sort of stopped for a while, and then trying to pick it up. And this is not in one region. This is internationally, so that's sort of a bummer. But we all picked up the pieces and worked out a plan. The things we do is about collaboration. It's working together and solving these problems together. So everybody had maybe a new adjusted role to play. But the physical part of it was really an issue, especially when you're in the manufacturing sector.
Okay. So would you say that it has adversely impacted those of us in the sustainability space? Because, for example, when the shutdown went into effect, basically everybody saw for the first time how our atmosphere, how much better it can look without all these polluting gases. Okay, so it made a case for switching from the internal combustion engine. All right. So from that perspective, somebody will say that it has been a positive. All right. So we will say that at the end of the day, we have come out ahead, or at the end of the day, we are the whole transition has been slowed down due to the impact of COVID and its related issues.
I could answer that question maybe with two answers. Let me give you the first. But if you look into an African scenario, I'm just talking about the continent, then COVID has really slowed down anything towards going green or going forward in the mobility sector, because, for instance, the idea with circular economy and green economies and the greenhouse gases, to cut down on these types of things, it's about public transport. So you want to grow, the numbers of people using public transport. Which now with COVID, just the opposite happened. 70 to 80% of the daily commuters are gone. Leaving only 20%. Adding to the revenue of these institutions and companies and so on. So from that point of view, it's gone the wrong way. And there's also commitments in place for light railways, BLRs and that sort of thing, where they are taking in extra coaches and trains over the next year or two. That's been ordered a couple of years back. But to pay for these things without the income stream, which is going to, I think, play out in the next year or two. We'll see things about that. On the second side, there was a ruling 2 weeks ago in the United Kingdom, and the first time that this happened, where the ruling stated that a young child's death can be directly attributed to. Are we there?
I'm here. I can see you.
The death can be directly attributed to exhaust gases, because their family stayed close to the M25 in London, and this girl had asthma because of the exhaust emissions. So that precedent has now been legalized, and that's going to bring a lot of things forward. So the second part of the answer is yes. I think more people are now aware of the damage that comes hand in hand with CO2 emissions and other greenhouse gases. I think people want change. They want the better option, the cleaner air option, and that sort of thing. So it's a double-sided sword. The investment made isn't paying off right now for public transport, because that's the main thing. So hopefully we will get some movement into the movement of goods delivery, trains, trucks, vans, that sort of thing here in Africa to expedite the scenario. But up to now, that's a very difficult scenario to predict. But I can see people are looking into it from afar. Big companies, the likes of Amazon, and there's quite a few African Amazon-like type of companies where they are changing to cleaner delivery modes. So I'm trying to see how we can get this into Africa with these players. But it's going to be a challenging year. But like I said, the challenges are there to be overcome.
Okay. So will you give the same answer when it comes to the circular economy also?
With the circular. Just to say again, please, Gav.
No, I'll say that. Will you say the same when it came to with respect to the circular economy? Because the answer you just gave seemed to be more with respect to mobility and transportation. And I'm saying my question is with respect to the circular economy, so reusing and all that, will you give the same answer, or are there differences?
Oh yes, no. That's my focus is the circular economy, and specifically circular mobility, and that's a total different ball game, because the manufacturers that I've spoken to and so on, they all have the same dilemma, and we are working to find solutions to this. But it's going to be easier in a European context and African context at this point in time, mainly because we are used to things being done a certain way in Africa, and the Europeans their way, and their way can be adjusted now because of a lot of money that's been put into this space, especially when it comes to, well, it's a wrong word to say recycling, because recycling doesn't work. Africa and a lot of other developing countries are actually getting rubbish from Europe that we have to burn or put into landfill. So that's not the game. It's about the value addition, the resource management of waste to make something from it, and also to keep specific waste streams within a country, then to utilize that for new products. And that's where mobility has got a huge role to play. Just to give you an idea, in the last 2 years, there's about 2 or 3 student groups that produce cars from waste. So for instance, if you have if you have a steel car, Eindhoven, for instance, universities and so on. So they've taken plastics, they've taken fibers, they've taken metals, and they've from waste streams, and they've reworked it into working cars. So that sort of thing in Africa, that's what we're looking at. But to open source it so people can then actually buy in and then produce these vehicles themselves, or as groups, and then use the associated technologies to enable this sort of thing. Because almost nobody in Africa needs a Tesla. We need a thing that can carry some sort of freight or passengers. It's not just about driving in 5-star luxury. It's about the practicalities of making money with the tool. That's what it's about. And for every pickup sold in South Africa, 1 car is sold. So it's a 50-50. So the pickup market, minibus market, that sort of thing, is where the challenge lies. So we need to keep the resources going, not sending it to landfill or to export your own resources then to other countries that can benefit in the long run from it. And that pertains to the metals, the fibers, the plastics, the rubber, and also then eventually the batteries. Because once a battery is in your country, the minerals should stay there. It's going to be a lot cheaper to rework the minerals at the end of life stage of a battery than to mine for them. So that's sort of the dilemma and the challenges for the circular economy.
Okay, sorry. So you made a comment in passing that I'm curious about that. You said that Europe is sending their waste to Africa.
Yeah.
Is it like a deliberate policy? Why? How?
That's the questions. Why? Why is it allowed? Well, first of all, waste traditionally, or certain types of waste traditionally went to China. We bought it for the reuse in their manufacturing processes, because it's, like I said, it's cheaper to use waste streams that you can use for products. Then they stopped. So what happened then is, say for instance, the United Kingdom or France or Belgium, they all have their own recycling targets. So they don't have the market for these products. So what they do is they put them in the containers that deliver products, and these containers then get fed back to certain developing countries, i.e. Africa and other Malaysian states, or Malaysia and other island states as well, where these materials end up. Why it's allowed, I don't know, but it's allowed. And what I'm trying to do is then to stop these type of practices by using the waste or certain types of waste into mobility solutions. And
wait, but the rationale we gave, I don't think Africa will have a lot of recycling or repurposing factories, if any, at all.
No, there's hardly any market for these products. That's why you have to create a market. You have to create the value for the consumer or then the producer to see, hey, listen, don't waste this, we can use it. I'll just take an example for you. If let's take what is the biggest city in your country, Gad?
That's Accra.
Accra. How many people?
Of 5 million. They call it 5.5.
About 5 million people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So for instance, let's just say that's a 2 million person coffee market, for instance, or drinks market where people buy drinks or hot drinks or cold drinks in not a disposable, in a paper cup or plastic cup, All right, so let's say that's 1 million transactions per day. So those cups go to landfill at this point in time. There's I know a few things here and there, but say the bulk, it's not being reused. The thing is, you can become a billionaire today if you manage the flow of just those cups for that one city. You can become a billionaire, but people aren't, addressing the problem because hardly anybody knows about it, and people are afraid of, I think, of something new. But yeah, there's models out there that if just by recycling, say, 1 million cups, not even a day, but let's say you do. Let's make a quick sum here. 2 million. Let's say you do 600 million cups a year that you can actually break down the materials and then get the materials back into use. Then you can have a whole ecosystem, a whole value chain with different players, all making money without costing the government anything, and at the end of the day making the government tax money. But then you have the materials back into the hand of the consumer, and that's a billion US dollar industry just there. Now imagine the rest of the waste. But that's why China bought it, but then they stopped because the value is there. You just have to be clever enough to figure out which materials and what processes you can use. So you use less virgin materials and more materials that are waste now to produce something of value. So it's interesting. Excuse me, it's hard. I mean, I've been doing this for the last 5-6 years, basically on my own here in Southern Africa. When you go and speak to people about the waste streams, and you go to landfill sites, and you go to recyclers and so on, then you see it's just a game they're playing. There's no real recycling being done. It's maybe a can in a bag, whatever, and that's it. But the milk bottles, for instance, high value items that can be turned to roof tiles and that sort of thing, just being discarded. Rubber tires are being cut up and buried. Same with the old food waste. So in South Africa, there's quite a few programs running in these spaces, but in the rest of Africa, it's just the waste material. And I think I know there's huge potential there, but like I said, it's like 2020. It's challenging.
What you are saying, it has so many implications on so many levels. Because the first thing is that the Europeans basically are exporting their waste to us. They are transferring their waste problem to us. Knowing full well we don't have any systems to handle it. Number one. Number two is looking at the nature of our cities, okay, and how they are. The planned and plannedness, if I can use a phrase, of our cities, okay, and the fact that populations are increasing, as well as the rate of urbanization. This is a problem, stroke opportunity, that can only increase with time. Okay, the challenge I see, based on we had a session with a friend of mine who is disciplined from the economy. What he was doing was replacing, let's say, plastics with natural made one from bagasse, so like food packs and all that from bagasse. Sugarcane, natural, the fiber, yeah, stuff like that. So substituting the oil-based packaging with this natural-based packaging that easily decomposes. Okay, but the challenge I see is there does not seem to be governmental backing. There does not seem to be financing. Financing is a challenge. I'm sure we will get to that. Financing is a challenge. And I wonder why. Because this is somebody who has demonstrated a business case it's no longer a business theory. You can see that he has built a manufacturing system. He has demonstrated how to get to the market. I mean, the entire business model has been proven, but money to expand and get enough skill so that the cost unit will even come down drastically is a challenge. So, first question along that one is, from your experience, is it that our governments, the Nigerian government, for example, and this is a presumptuous question, is not backing this whole space, circular economy space, the way they ought to? Because it's beneficial to them as well as everybody.
Yeah, I want to just start quickly in the beginning of your question. It's not really much education; it's attitude. So you know, people can be educated X, Y, and Z, but the attitude is about what you at the end of the day do. Plastics isn't a bad thing because it's great for a lot of users. It's got huge potential to stay in the loop. When I talk about a loop, can be reused over and over again. We just don't need more of it. If we stop now and just use the ones that we have, and then go with that, that's also a good thing. Because the problem is when you start to mix biological material like the fibers or bioplastics with normal plastics, you can't recycle it and it's tainted. So there's a huge problem there at this point in time. Eventually, what you want to have is everything that's good, but we're not there as a globe, a country, a world. We have to now deal with what we have, and the first thing to do is stop landfills. Make sure that everything that's at the end of their life, be it single-use plastics or vehicles or tires or furniture or electric equipment, goes into the next life, and the next life needs to be what they call it the upcycling event. So the product that follows the previous product needs to be of equal or higher quality or use, not lower. Then you start building value. So there's enough materials in Africa right now to sustain double the current population in wealth. So yeah, then that brings us to the countries. When you look at the United Nations, you look at the reports concerning the Paris Climate Agreement, and you look at the developing countries especially, then you'll find there of all the developing countries in the world, with the last COP25 that was held was supposed to be held in Chile, and I think they ended up holding it in Spain. The only developing country in the whole world that submitted a report was Namibia.
Was Namibia?
Yes, on climate change.
And the
only developing country that submitted their report on time for the UN, the UNFCCC, which is the climate bit there. And the thing is, they submitted a report, and that report contained data on it that was 5 years old. So even that report, you can take it. Yeah, but there was a report. So it shows there's a plan, so there's intent at least. So I think the governments are just out of touch with really what's going on. They are too focused on keeping the business as usual mentality, to safeguard the jobs that are there by all means, not looking for new ways. And that's where the organization that I represent in Africa, the African Circular Economy Network, that's what we do, is we assist governments, businesses, individuals with their projects. So if you go to asin.africa, you can join up there, you can become a member, and that's where you can find the links for your project, be it institution that's willing to fund you or collaborate with you, or you need knowledge finding or anything like that. That's available there, and what isn't known will be found out, and that's a growing community across Africa. All Africa countries are are involved there. So you'll find a local country leader or country agent that you can speak to in your own language. The other day we had meetings basically in French, and well, I suffered with that meeting, but we got through it. So in your own language, you'll be able to also then speak with people. So you don't have to know English, for instance. You know, you can be helped in your local dialect. So those things are available to everyone. That's where the education comes in. So if the people are there, the education can be had, and most of it is free. You know, it's about show your intent, and you can be helped. But the governments themselves, right now, with COVID, they are trying to lessen the impact by protecting jobs, and you'll see a lot of things about building new roads and bridges and that sort of infrastructure, which we don't need. They need to spend that money now in. Well, the thing is, what's going to happen now is we're going to have less cars on the road eventually, right? So if you want to ensure people get to A to B, you know, build a railway line or something like that, which is more efficient. Focus on that. Don't focus on putting more cars on the road, or you know, how many vehicles are roadworthy in Africa, and how many accidents do we have on the road? Just put those ones on the rails, for instance. You know, it's a cheaper sum, and your impact will be greater. Electric cars, for instance, don't pay oil duties or petrol duties for the government, so there's no tax for them. So they need to start to think what's going to happen in 20 years' time. They're not going to receive the taxable income from cars anymore, which normally pays for the roads, the upkeep, and so on. So they have to now adjust the vision now for what's going to happen in 20 years' time. Because you know, without the income from fuel taxes, there isn't going to be maintenance on roads. So just build less and maintain the ones that are there, but make sure there's other ways for people to get around, for goods to get around. So that's sort of the shift that's coming. You know, we've seen the top of vehicle sales in the world. It's going to go down from now. It's going to go that way. So I think 2018 was the high of you know, the sales of new vehicles in the world. Yeah, so it's a different world.
All that you said is true, but every in terms of revenue, government revenue, it can change. The governments can find new ways of taxing vehicle owners. For example, those who are EVs, they are not paying petroleum tax because they are not buying petroleum. But the government can say that instead of annual renewal, they don't have a monthly renewal fee. They will usage fee for EVs. You know, in lieu of petroleum tax. But that's a different conversation. What I wanted to follow up on is what you said about Namibia and the IPCC submission. Okay, what that tells me is that they are not interested, okay, the federal government, because or they don't really understand the economic impact that they can make. Because from what you just told me earlier about reusing or repurposing, that's a better word, repurposing waste for other uses. Okay, you can generate more jobs and more work, and the governments are all focused on saving the jobs that are there already due to COVID, right? So it's a win-win. Why? There's something I don't understand, or that I'm missing. You can chalk it to attitude, but I do know that almost all of them are part of this whole UN environmental. I mean, they know about these things.
Yeah, of course, governments knows about these things. They get informed, and remember, all governments basically have to conform to United Nations, their rules and regulations. So if the United Nations say you need X, Y, and Z done, this office, and that report, then they have to do it, because that's how you get money from the United Nations. By submitting that report to the United Nations or UNFCCC, Namibia had access to green finance, which they then, well, hopefully are using for the development work in Namibia. But the problem is, we now have the African trade unions now being declared a thing. But I tell you, if you can just show me anyone that can exactly tell me how this is going to work, I will really appreciate it, because it's unknown. In Ghana, they are producing the Hyundai Kona electric vehicle right now. It's brand new, Volkswagen, e-Golfs, and that sort of thing. There's 6 African countries, other than South Africa now, that's in that space. Excuse me. So the question is, does this now allow that country then to export to South Africa directly without any taxes or duties? Nobody can tell me, so I'm not sure what the African Free Trade Agreement means. Because everybody right now, they're protecting their own industry. You can't import a used vehicle from Japan into South Africa, although the rest of Africa, basically, that's the only vehicles they can sell to the normal consumers. So there's a lot of things that I still need to find out about it. And why I'm saying that is, so you have the United Nations, you have the African Union, you have the local government. Everybody has to now act in unison. It doesn't help Namibia to do X and in South Africa Y and Morocco, V. It all needs to be the same now. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. And that's why the European Union is working there, because you have all these countries now agreeing, and they're putting their focus energies into these problems, and that's why things are getting done. We need to get there as soon as possible as Africa, because right now, sorry?
We would say that brings us to the African Continental Free Trade Area. After.
What does that mean? What does that mean? I don't know.
Are you kidding me?
Because it's supposed to be free trade, but it's not.
Yes,
it's just.
I don't understand what you want to mean by that.
Yeah, because if I want to give you money now for a project from South Africa, I want to tell you, here's R1 million for you to go and do X, Y, and Z. By the time the money comes to you, it's 800,000, 200,000 is bank fees and this and that and the other thing. If you look at the currency fluctuations, if you time it wrong. So that's not free trade, It needs to be a single currency. We need to have an African currency. So that's point number one, because if I undercut you because your currency is weaker than me, I'm going to benefit more than dealing with you. So there's. I like what I'm hearing about the African trade, scenario, and I think the ideas are good, but it now needs to be defined. Everybody involved now needs to have a common goal. If it's on a financial side, on the green economy side, post-COVID, trade, whatever, it needs to be a common thing now. And I'm not seeing that. Everybody's still in it for themselves. This one is picking oil, and this one is doing that. For instance, Namibia was
but the African Continental area. When you read the document, I'm very much interested, and I've started reading a bit on it. And in fact, we had a session with a gentleman who's about this community to disseminate information about Africa. They are focusing on people, they are focusing on services, and they are focusing on goods. All right. When you read the documents, what you see that it's a bit more than even a trade agreement. All right. Number one. And number two, it's like a phase plan. All right. I have not seen yes, anything about a single currency. All right. However, I've also seen, I am part of ECOWAS. You know, there is sub-regional groupings that we have on the continent. I know that East Africa, for example, the sub-regional group is really working. They don't have a single currency, but in terms of standardization, it's working. So we may not get there immediately, but I think there's a rumor. If our leaders don't mess it up, you see, because in Ghana here, what I see is that we are supposed to have a single sort of market. In practice, so a product produced here in Ghana, if we are shipping it to Nigeria or Ivory Coast or whatever, we also have to pay taxes. But in practice, if the goods are moving from here by road, for example, the police, the customs, the gendarmes on the way, they will be accepting their tax, their road usage fees, okay, for their personal pockets. That is a barrier. If we are also moving across the sub-region, we now have an ECOWAS passport, all right, which a large chunk of our people don't use even. But if you have an ECOWAS passport, a lot of places they will expect you to tip them, the, how do you call them, the immigration officers. I hope you get what I'm saying.
I'm hearing about passports and stuff. I'm just listening. I'm not going to say anything yet.
So what I do foresee is that it's going to start working after a fashion. All right. Mind you, most of our problem is because we have very small pockets. So the customs officer or the gendarme or the whatever, I want them to justify their action, but a lot of the time it's because they don't need something to support their salary, which is minuscule. I hope you get what I'm saying. It is, I think that standardization is going to be a key thing that will either make or break the whole this whole thing. But if you can get it right, the African, it's not to make things like in terms of moving around. It's part of business now. When you are shipping goods across borders, you have to give the driver something for the road, apart from the freight charges. It has become a standard way of business expense.
There's a lot of things there to unpack. So let me just pick a quick few before I get to the next one. So Namibia furnished the United Nations with these environmental reports, all right, about CO2 reductions. Yet the Canadians are now going to drill for oil in the Kavango Basin, probably the biggest environmental hotspot in Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe, where they come together. They're going to drill for oil. So how do you put two together? Yeah. So the thing is, the question is now, how do you? I mean, if you say something, you're going to reduce emissions or, go in certain directions, and then you allow this type of action, then what must you now believe? The second thing is, excuse me, with the African Union Free Trade Agreement and passports and all these things, the problem there is 70% of all transactions in Africa are done with external forces. Chinese, Japanese, European, American, all right? So we're not supporting each other. So we don't know how to do business with one another. That's one of the problems. Supply agreements are in place for raw materials with Americans, Chinese, Japanese, and Europeans. They're not in place with local entities. In South Africa, the steel smelters are going out of business. They're closing down. The steel is being worked in India, China, and Sri Lanka, and then get re-imported into Africa, for instance, in the automotive industry. So that needs to stop. But it takes, like I said, it's not education. It's the willingness, the attitude of the people in charge to get to get this done, but we need a common set of rules so we can have the same dialogue and make it work for each party. Because once you're in a supplier agreement with these countries, for you to get out of it might be near impossible. And for the electric mobility scenario to work in Africa, we need local battery manufacturing capacity. But how do you do that if the raw materials are going to X, Y, and Z and not staying here because we don't have the, I won't say facilities, but you know, when you make a battery, you need a certain grade of graphene and lithium and that sort of thing, cobalt. So those things are spoken for at this point in time by external buyers. So it's a difficult scenario. When it comes to single African currency, I think it will be a cryptocurrency. So we can all put our own currencies into this cryptocurrency, which we can then just use everywhere without single currency and anything, because anything can be proven. It's the amount of fraud in the finance sector in Africa. You know, I'm just looking at South Africa and Namibia now. There's billions gone and this and that and other thing. So you know, we have to empower the people, and the power needs to be with the people in this changeover of the African Union, the free trade zone. Well, as a free trade zone, that's how it will happen. The people needs to do this, not wait for government X and Y and Z.
And what I think is a radical idea that we the people come up with a cryptocurrency. Is that what I'm suggesting? And then we put all the governments. I mean, I need some clarity. It's still a radical idea.
Yeah, well, you should have the freedom to do with your money whatever you want. I mean, if you have an income and you pay your taxes, what's left is yours, and you can do with it whatever you want. You should have that right. You know, because now what you do is, if you import, say a car from Japan today, you don't pay the exchange rate now. You pay it when it arrives at the port. So in this 14, 21 days that the vehicle is on sea, on the ocean, on a liner, the interest rate can go negative. That means you have to pay maybe 15% more taxes on a vehicle that you bargained for. That puts pressure on your selling price, and that goes the same for food, anything. And that's sort of the problem that we're dealing with. We can overcome it, but yeah, that's probably another discussion. I'm just giving you ideas about how I see the scenario playing out. But it's the people. So if we want circular mobility or circular use of materials, it's us that's gonna, not governments, it's us that's gonna make a difference. And I can see some projects up and running through the African Circular Economy Network. You can see what's happening. You have these small grids coming online now where people pay for electricity from solar and wind. You know, the small, yeah. There's finance for that over Africa, and then they add electric bicycles and electric car eventually. So you can see it's happening, but the thing is, it has to be African. You don't just accept, say, the European model or the American model or Chinese model because they're not African. And African, we are all different in Africa because we have different ways of living. If you take the rainy part of Africa, there's a different way of dealing with things than, say, the drier parts. And, you know, everything has to be matched to the specific needs of the population in this country. So if we have the rules and we know how to play and we know how to adjust, that will really help. And I think that's where the African Union can play its part. And then we need clarification on free trade. How is it going to work? What is excluded and what's included? And you know, to have an African passport is great. I think that's one thing. But then I need to know I can sell my goods to whatever country and pay no duties, because that's what free trade entails: is zero duties.
Yes. They said there's supposed to be a gradual phasing of the duties to zero for 90% of all goods. from every country. So I don't know the criteria individual countries to use to exclude the other 10%. Okay. And me, I because that's my experience, I always try to base that discussion from the background of ECOWAS. But that's what I know. That's what I'm saying. And what I saw is that sometimes the so-called big countries, they sometimes want to bully the smaller ones. You see, but anyway, who hand that one to for now? Maybe next time we'll get somebody from maybe Idris and you can have a discussion along those lines. You be the skeptic, he be the optimist about it after we see.
Yes. But I think it's good to see how things interlink. Yeah. But it's good to see how everything is interlinked. So if you talk about mobility, all these other things are interlinked with it. It's not a standalone sector. It's like the circular economy. It's not about a sector. It's cross-sectoral. So each and every sector in the economy, it's part of the work that we're doing. So you have to understand of that. Yeah.
Well, these are platform ideas and solutions. I do get that a lot because like we are using energy and transportation. These are all platforms. So by themselves, they may not be relevant, but they are needed for almost every other thing that you are doing. Anyway, so thank you very much for our audience. This is the end of part 1.